I remember the sting of that night as if it were pressed into my skin like the hospital wristband I refused to take off. The words still echo sharp and cruel. Marcus just got his degree. I can't leave him. Grab yourself an Uber. That was Alex's message sent while I lay on a stiff bed in the emergency room, my left arm in pieces, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic. I stared at that text as if the letters were carved in stone. The fluorescent lights above me hummed while I held the wristband, its edge sticky with a smear of blood that had dried in jagged lines. I should have felt relief. I had survived the accident, but what I felt was colder. Betrayal has its own temperature, and it chills a person far deeper than ice. Outside, the ER rain drummed against the glass. The nurse who taped my arm tried to offer comfort, but she could not know that the ache in my chest throbbed harder than any broken bone. Alex was supposed to be my partner of 2 years. We shared a mortgage, we shared weekends filled with plans, we shared dreams of stability. But that night he chose champagne over me. I asked myself the same question again and again. What kind of person looks at a message that says, "Car accident, hospital, broken arm," and replies with a shrug? What kind of person raises a glass while their partner bleeds? Later, I would hear how it played out at the restaurant. The police officer called Alex, letting him know I had been brought in, asking him to come as my emergency contact. Alex had his phone pressed to his ear while the waiter poured another round. And Marcus, his lifelong friend, born into comfort and inheritance, laughed loud enough for the entire table to hear. Who leaves a champagne toast for a broken arm? That line made the others roar with laughter, their crystal glasses clinking above plates of seared duck. I was not there to see it, but I did not need to be. A stranger captured the moment on their phone, the image later spreading across screens far beyond that restaurant. Alex's face frozen in discomfort, Marcus, laughing with a mouthful of wine, the table glowing under chandeliers, as if betrayal itself had been staged. In that instant, I understood something about myself I had ignored for too long. I had always been the steady one, the reliable one, the person who paid bills on time and remembered birthdays. Alex brought excitement, Marcus brought luxury, and I was the grounding stone. But a stone can also become invisible, stepped on, while others chase the sparkle of a glass flute. As I lay in that hospital bed, the voices of my paramedic colleagues faded. What replaced them was silence, a silence that was not peaceful but hollow. I thought of the keys to our apartment resting in my bag, keys he did not deserve to carry. I thought of the savings I had worked years to build, $300,000 of quiet discipline, untouched by his reckless spending. And I thought of the mortgage each month, a weight I carried while he played at success. The truth is, you learn a lot about love when steel collides with steel and your life dangles in the balance. Love that cannot rise in crisis is not love at all. It is theater. I kept replaying the scene. I imagined Marcus lifting his glass, Alex smirking nervously, the table lit with false camaraderie. None of them knew what that moment would become. None of them understood that in an age where everything can be filmed, cruelty does not vanish. It circulates. And so I made myself a quiet promise. They wanted laughter at my expense. They wanted to treat my pain as background noise. Very well. I would make sure every laugh became evidence. Tell me something. Would you leave your partner in the emergency room for a party? Comment yes or no below and hit subscribe. We need to talk about loyalty and the price of betrayal. Because this part matters. The champagne may have been sweet that night, but the aftertaste was bitter enough to ruin them all. The hospital room quieted after midnight. The machines clicked and sighed, recording the rhythm of my pulse, while the rain outside softened into mist. I lay there, my arms strapped and my head aching from the concussion, staring at the thin curtain that separated me from another patient who groaned in his sleep. What hurt most was not the broken bone. Pain can be dulled with medication. What pierced deeper was the silence of my phone. No missed calls. No messages asking, "Are you all right?" Not from Alex, not from Marcus, not from anyone who had toasted with them at that shining table. I thought back to earlier years when Alex swore he admired my discipline. I was the saver, the planner, the woman who quietly put $300,000 aside while he spent on brand new watches and business class tickets to nowhere. "You're my anchor," he used to say. That night I realized anchors are useful until the ship decides to drift toward brighter harbors. The nurse came in with a clipboard. "Still no response from your emergency contact," she said gently. I forced a smile. No surprise there. Her face softened, the kind of look people give when they recognize abandonment but don't know what to say. She adjusted the blanket and left me to the hum of the machines. I unlocked my phone again. The screen flickered, cracked from the crash, but it still worked. I scrolled through old photos of Alex and me birthdays, vacations, quiet dinners. Each image felt counterfeit now, like watching actors play love on a stage. Then I saw the message again, his casual dismissal. Grab yourself an Uber. Words that stripped away 2 years of partnership in a single stroke. At dawn, I finally checked social media. That was when the humiliation sharpened into something else. A stranger had uploaded a short clip from the restaurant. The caption read, "Finance bros laugh while girlfriend suffers in ER." The video showed Alex looking uncomfortable as Marcus raised his glass, sneering. "Who leaves a champagne toast for a broken arm?" Laughter followed, bright and cruel. By morning, the clip had crossed 1 million views. Comments poured in, some mocking Alex, some furious at the callousness. I read lines like, "If my partner did this, they'd come home to an empty closet, and money can buy champagne but not character." For a moment, strangers cared more about me than the person I had trusted most. But what they didn't know was how deep the pattern ran. The clip was not an isolated cruelty. It was the loudest echo of countless smaller betrayals: the nights Alex skipped dinners because Marcus had business drinks, the vacations canceled because Marcus needed him at some gala. I had been the third wheel in a relationship I thought was mine. I tried to swallow the bitterness, but humiliation leaves its own residue. I felt invisible, reduced to a cautionary tale on the internet, yet beneath the shame stirred a faint, steady flame. Strangers might forget the clip in a week. Alex and Marcus might laugh it off. But I would not. I had seen too much loss, too much to let them walk away untouched. Still, in that early morning light, the loneliness pressed heavy. I thought of the apartment waiting for me, the mortgage bill, due in 10 days, the kitchen where Alex left his half-empty wine glasses. I pictured him returning after the celebration, still warm with champagne, perhaps scrolling through comments mocking me. Did he laugh then? Did Marcus pour him another glass and say, "Don't worry, she'll forgive you"? I turned the phone off. The screen went black, reflecting only my own tired face. In that reflection, I did not see a victim. Not yet. But I also did not see the woman I had been before. Something was shifting, quiet but certain. What I didn't know then was how the clip would spread even further, picked up by blogs, reposted by influencers, dissected in online debates about loyalty and class. What I didn't know was that humiliation, once made public, can become its own form of power if you know how to wield it. I'll explain that part later. For now, remember this: the silence of a phone can tell you more about love than 1,000 promises whispered in better times. I left the hospital the next afternoon with my arm bound in a stiff cast, my head still buzzing from the concussion. The sky had cleared, and the city streets glistened with puddles, reflecting steel towers. I should have felt grateful for survival. Instead, I felt stripped bare, as though everyone on the sidewalk could see the text messages branded across my skin. I ordered a car home. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, helped me with the door. "Bad accident?" he asked softly. "Something like that," I said. I didn't explain. The truth was too ugly to hand to a stranger. Back in the apartment, silence filled the rooms like fog. Alex's shoes rested by the door-polished leather that had cost more than one of my paychecks. His coat hung neatly in the closet. Yet he wasn't there. He hadn't even left a note. On the table, a single champagne cork sat like a cruel souvenir. I sat down with my phone, scrolling through notifications. The viral clip had reached 3 million views. News blogs were sharing it under headlines like, "When Loyalty Meets Luxury and Champagne Over Commitment." Each time I watched the video, shame curled in my stomach. But then I saw the comments again, angry, relentless, siding with me. For the first time, the humiliation began to bend into something sharper. I opened the group chat Alex shared with Marcus and their circle of so-called successful friends. I had access because Alex once asked me to check his phone for directions, and I never signed out. The chat was alive with cruelty. Marcus had written, "She's probably milking the sympathy for likes." Another friend added, "Hospital wristbands make great fashion accessories." And Alex, the man I lived with, replied with a laughing emoji. I read it once, then twice. My breath steadied. The ache in my arm faded into background noise. What pierced me now was clarity. They were not ashamed. They were amused. My pain was entertainment. I took screenshots, every message, every cruel remark, every smirk wrapped in text bubbles. I stored them in a private folder labeled receipts. That evening, while the city outside hummed with traffic, I called an old college friend, Naomi, a lawyer, now working for a firm downtown. She answered on the second ring. Olivia, my God, I saw the clip. Are you all right? I'm fine, I said, though my voice shook. But I need advice. Not legal advice, not yet. Personal advice. What do you do when someone shows you exactly who they are? Naomi was silent for a moment. Then she said, You believe them, and then you decide how to respond. Those words rooted inside me. Believe them. Decide how to respond. I didn't tell Naomi everything, not yet, but I promised we'd meet soon. When I hung up, I stared at the screenshots again. Evidence, yes, but also a map. They thought they could laugh toast and walk away. They thought betrayal had no consequence. They were wrong. Late that night, I wrote in my journal. I listed every financial tie I had with Alex, the mortgage, the shared account for bills, the credit card he used more than I did. I calculated my savings, $300,000 intact, untouched by him. I thought about the mortgage, about how easily I could cover it without his contribution. Slowly, the outline of a plan formed. It wouldn't be loud at first. Revenge never begins with fireworks. It begins with silence, with patience, with the steady gathering of proof. Still, I couldn't resist imagining the moment walking into one of their glittering parties, holding my cast like a badge and laying their words bare for everyone to hear. The humiliation they had poured onto me would be returned multiplied. But that moment had to be prepared, crafted, and I would not rush. What they didn't know was that their laughter had written my script for me. They had staged the betrayal. All I had to do now was decide how the final act would play. The invitation arrived the following week, embossed on heavy cardstock, Marcus's signature flourish at the bottom. It was for the post-graduation celebration at his penthouse, one of those glittering glass towers overlooking the river where champagne flowed as if water were too common. I read the invitation twice, then slipped it into my folder labeled Receipts. I knew I had to go. The night of the party, I dressed carefully. My arm was still bound in plaster, a stark white cast from shoulder to wrist. Instead of hiding it, I chose a black dress that left it bare. Let them see what they had ignored. Around my neck, I wore a silver pendant my grandmother had given me. It was the only thing that made me feel grounded, a reminder that dignity does not come from money or applause. The elevator ride up to the penthouse was quiet, except for the pounding of my heart. When the doors opened, sound spilled out music, laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses. The penthouse glowed with chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city lights. People milled about in suits and gowns, their voices bright with the confidence of wealth. Alex was near the bar. He froze when he saw me. For a brief second, I saw guilt flash across his face. Then the mask returned, polite, strained like a host surprised by an uninvited guest. Marcus spotted me too. His smile curled sharp as glass. Well, look who survived, Marcus said loudly, drawing glances. Our very own crash test dummy. Laughter bubbled from a few nearby guests, uncertain but eager to align with power. I walked to the center of the room. My heels clicked against marble, steady and deliberate. When I reached the piano in the corner, I set my phone on top, connected it to the speaker system, and tapped play. The viral clip filled the penthouse. Marcus's voice rang out. Who leaves a champagne toast for a broken arm? Laughter followed, crisp and cruel. The room fell silent as the guests turned toward the sound. I didn't stop there. I opened the folder of screenshots and projected them onto the penthouse's massive television screen. Alex's laughing emoji, Marcus's mocking text, the chat where my pain had been a punchline. The words glowed larger than life, impossible to ignore. 2 years together, I said, my voice steady, and this is what loyalty meant to him. A broken arm traded for champagne. A relationship reduced to an emoji. The silence was sharp. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at Alex and Marcus with wide eyes. A woman near the bar muttered, My God. Marcus stepped forward, his face red. This is private, he snapped. You have no right, no right. I cut him off. You made it public the moment you laughed. The world has already seen it. I'm just making sure your friends see it too. Alex tried to speak, his voice faltering. Olivia, please, not like this. Not like this, I raised my cast. Tell me, Alex, what way would you prefer? The way you preferred that night when I lay in the ER while you clinked glasses. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone near the back whispered, She's right. And then it happened, the crack in their polished facade. One of the investors who had backed Marcus's latest venture stood, his face grim. I cannot associate with this, he said, setting his glass down with a sharp click. He walked out, and others followed. Each departure was a nail in Marcus's carefully built empire. I looked at Alex one last time. His face was pale, his hands trembling. You left me broken for a toast, I said quietly. Now you can drink alone. I picked up my phone, disconnected it from the speaker, and walked out. The room behind me buzzed with shock, but I didn't look back. What they didn't know was that the night had only begun. Humiliation is not the end, it is the seed of something larger. And their empire of laughter was already collapsing. By dawn, the morning after the penthouse showdown, the city skyline glowed lavender, and the headlines glowed hotter. A business blog posted the clip of me projecting Alex's mocking emoji above Marcus's crystal decanters. Within minutes, larger outlets echoed it. By noon, the story sat atop trending lists beneath a tidy banner, Champagne Cowards, when vanity exposes itself. I watched it all from the window seat in my apartment arm, in its rigid cast mug of coffee cooling in my hand. I felt the ache of the fracture, yet somewhere under the bandages my confidence was stitching itself whole. The articles focused again and again on 3 images: my white cast against the black dress, Alex's frozen grimace, Marcus's glare as investors slipped out the doorway like silent verdicts. Reporters called me eager for quotes. I declined the earliest requests. I did not want to be reduced to a soundbite. Instead, I opened my laptop and wrote my own story, one deliberate sentence at a time on the professional network where careers rise or fall with a click. The piece was titled, "When Loyalty Dies at the Dinner Table." I described the accident in plain terms. I described the empty seat beside my hospital bed. I described the champagne toast that rang louder than sirens. I ended with a question. If character is tested when plans collapse, what does your answer sound like? I posted the essay and closed the lid, then walked slowly, carefully down the block. The air smelled of early spring and new asphalt. Strangers passed me unaware that my words were already traveling faster than their morning commute. By the time I returned, my inbox overflowed. Messages came from nurses, teachers, truck drivers, a retired judge, an 80-year-old widower who wrote, "I believed my loneliness was private until I read your story." But among the notes was one from a senior editor at a respected financial magazine. She offered me a monthly column reflections on ethics, finance, and the quiet power of saying no. I let the offer sit for an hour long enough to feel its weight, then accepted. Opportunity, unlike betrayal, should not be left waiting. While my fortunes shifted upward, Marcus's slid downhill. 2 large investors withdrew from his newest venture, citing misalignment of values. A tech podcast replayed his cruel toast until even sympathetic listeners winced. One commentator observed, "Charisma is magnetic until it flips polarity, then it repels faster than it attracted." Alex tried to call. I let every ring fade into silence. He wrote lengthy emails, each apology thicker than the last, promising therapy, promising charity, promising that he finally understood. But the words sounded like coins tossed into an empty fountain. I did not answer. Some doors once closed are better sealed. It was Marcus who finally broke the hush. Late evening, as streetlights blinked alive, he appeared in the lobby of my apartment building. The doorman rang me. I considered ignoring the call, yet curiosity is stubborn. I descended in the elevator arm, aching with each floor, and found Marcus pacing the marble tile suit, rumpled eyes red. "Olivia," he said, voice raw, "you destroyed me." I met his gaze steady. "No. You built the tower. I simply pulled aside the curtain." He rubbed his temples as if the truth itself throbbed. Investors backed out. My board is talking replacement, all because of one mistake. One mistake, I lifted my cast. This is bone. Bones take months to heal. Respect takes longer. Marcus's shoulders sagged. "What do you want from me?" "I want nothing," I replied. "That is your punishment, to learn that not everyone can be bought with guilt or favors. My life will move forward without you shadowing its light." He looked around the lobby as though hoping an audience might soften the judgment. There was none. He left footsteps hollow, carrying the weight of an empire built on laughter that was never meant to echo back. That night, while the cast itched and the city pulsed below my phone chimed again, this time a message from a headhunter representing a global firm. They offered a position that doubled my current salary, praised my resilience, cited my essay as proof of leadership in crisis. I thought about my $300,000 of savings, about mortgages and medical bills, and smiled. Survival, when paired with integrity, compounds like interest. I accepted the offer the next morning, signing the contract with my good hand. A quiet thrill coursed through me. New beginnings often sound like pens scratching paper. News of the promotion spread almost as quickly as the scandal itself. Some commenters called it poetic justice, others a modern fairy tale. I did not correct them. Reality seldom fits tidy genres. It sprawls messy and beautiful across expectation. On the seventh day after the party, I removed the hospital wristband at last. Its plastic edges had grown soft, the ink smudged, but I saved it in a small wooden box beside the silver pendant. Tokens of pain and of strength, reminders that both can occupy the same palm. What comes next? In a month, I will address a conference hall filled with analysts and executives. I will step to the podium, cast still visible, and speak about trust, not as a corporate slogan, but as a living contract sealed in ordinary moments. Marcus and Alex may watch from afar, or they may not watch at all. Either way, the lesson remains. I used to believe betrayal was an ending. Now I see it as a hinge. Doors swing, rooms change, light falls differently. Step through, and the view expands. I had promised myself I would grant Alex a single conversation. Endings like wounds need to be cleaned before they can close. We met in the early evening at a small cafe near the river, a neutral place with soft lighting and tables spaced far enough apart that strangers' sorrows did not mingle. I arrived first cast, tucked close to my side, and ordered chamomile tea. Calm mattered. Alex stepped in shoulders, slumped suit jacket hanging as if borrowed from a stronger man. He spotted me, offered a tentative smile, and sat without waiting for invitation. For a long breath, neither of us spoke. Outside, the river moved in steady silver folds. Inside, steam curled from my cup like a patient ghost. Olivia, he began, clearing his throat. I have rehearsed this apology 100 times. I lifted my gaze. Then choose the version you believe. His eyes glistened. I was careless. I let Marcus's influence, that whole image, cloud what mattered. When the officer called, I panicked, thought leaving would ruin Marcus's night. I convinced myself you were safe. He shook his head. It sounds absurd now. Not absurd, I corrected softly, revealing. He winced. I deserve that. Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew the apartment key and laid it on the table. Brass against wood, a tiny sunlit flash. You trusted me with this. I failed. I did not reach for the key. Instead, I slid a folded sheet of paper from my purse, a concise agreement drafted by Naomi. It ended our shared finances, transferred his portion of the mortgage back to me, severed the bill account, and acknowledged reimbursement for charges he had run up in recent months. The numbers were stark, nearly $12,000 in personal expenses I had absorbed now, to be repaid in monthly installments. Alex scanned the document. His jaw tightened, yet he nodded. I will honor every cent, he whispered. Naomi said you could garnish wages if I faltered. I hope you will not, I replied. This is not punishment, it is closure. Silence settled again, but it no longer felt suffocating. Somewhere a plate clinked. A barista called out an order. Life continued in ordinary rhythms, proof that heartbreak, though loud, to those who bear it, is but a softer note in the city's constant song. He drew a breath. I miss us. I wrapped my fingers around the warm porcelain cup. Which part, I asked? The evenings we planned our futures, or the evenings you canceled because Marcus had a banquet? Tears pooled in his eyes. He did not blink them away. I cannot change the past, but I can learn. Learning is noble, I said, voice gentle yet firm. But some lessons finish with graduation. This is yours. I exhaled slowly. I forgive you, Alex. Forgiveness is for me, not you. It frees me from the weight. But trust cannot be rebuilt from splinters. He bowed his head. I sensed the final thread between us fray, then fall silent. He signed the document date, and signature trembling, slid it back and rose. Before he left, he spoke once more. I hope your new job treats you well. It already does, I answered. And I hope you learn to pick up the phone when loyalty calls. He nodded, walked out, and with him went the echo of 2 years. I lingered, sipping the tea until its warmth faded. On the table lay the key, and the signed agreement artifacts of a chapter closed. I slipped both into an envelope and sealed it. Some things belong to history, not pockets. Outside, twilight scattered rose gold across the river. I strolled along the walkway, cradling my cast against the evening chill, reflecting on the strange arithmetic of loss and gain. I had lost a partner but gained unclouded sight, lost shared plans but gained unshared freedom. In the ledger of life, balance sometimes arrives disguised. 2 days later, movers collected Alex's remaining items: a tailored coat, a pair of cufflinks, several books on disruptive innovation now boxed and labeled. The apartment once crowded by his restless energy felt spacious. I repainted the bedroom, a soft cream opened windows to invite fresh air, and for the first time since, the accident slept through the night. My new firm sent welcome flowers and a slim laptop. The onboarding packet included a line that made me smile. We value ethics as much as earnings. On my first remote call, the managing director introduced me as a professional whose integrity has already influenced an entire industry. I answered questions about fiscal strategy, but afterward colleagues asked about resilience. One said her teenage daughter replayed my speech from the conference, taking notes on courage. I felt the weight of that, tender and humbling. As weeks slid toward summer, Marcus's venture dissolved. Headlines spoke of irreparable reputational damage. Investors sought safer harbors. Rumor said Marcus retreated to a family estate upstate, a palace of manicured lawns and locked gates. I did not celebrate his downfall. My victory required no rubble. In late June, I returned to the hospital for a final checkup. The doctor removed the cast, revealing an arm, pale, tender, but whole. I flexed my fingers, stiff yet obedient, marveling at the body's quiet craftsmanship. Healing, I realized, is simply the art of persistence, practiced in flesh. That evening, I stood on my apartment balcony, city lights blinking like distant campfires. I held the retired cast for a moment, then placed it beside the wristband in the wooden box. Pain souvenirs sealed and stored. To those who ask if I regret the public confrontation, I answer with a smile: sunlight disinfects, secrets rot in darkness. Truth, however harsh, invites fresh air. I have no room now for rot. My life is drafty with honesty, and I breathe more easily than ever. Summer advanced with blue-white skies and evenings that smelled of cut grass. My new role settled upon me like a well-tailored coat. Each morning I rose before dawn, brewed dark coffee, and opened the slim laptop the firm had mailed. Strategy briefs awaited, yet none felt heavy. I carried experience that no spreadsheet could quantify. When colleagues asked how to weigh risk, I spoke of broken bones and broken promises. Flesh, I said, heals slower than markets, so invest first in character. They nodded, scribbling notes. Mid-July brought an invitation to deliver a talk at a regional TEDx conference. The theme was turning points, and the organizer said, "We want the voice behind that essay." I drafted lines late at night, soft lamplight pooling across my desk. I wrote about small choices: the decision to step into an elevator, the decision to press play on a recording, and how each choice widens or narrows the hallway of one's future. I rehearsed in front of the bedroom mirror, arms still stiff, though free of plaster silver pendant steady against my throat. On the day of the event, I stood backstage listening to the host introduce me as a financial advisor who turned betrayal into a compass for integrity. My pulse thrummed, yet when the curtain parted, I felt oddly calm. Elderly faces sat beside college students. All leaned forward, wanting story more than spectacle. I spoke for 15 minutes about the accident, the champagne toast, the public reckoning, and the quiet labor of mending trust, inward first, outward second. When I finished, the hall held a hush so full it sounded like music, then applause rose strong and warm. Afterward, a retired accountant approached Kane, tapping the floor. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Your words stitched something in me," she said. "I thought courage belonged only to the young." I clasped her hands, feeling the fine parchment of her skin. "Courage belongs to anyone willing to lose what is false," I replied. She smiled, a sunrise unfolding in slow motion. Moments like that defy valuation. They pay in a currency beyond arithmetic. The video of the talk reached the internet within days, climbing past 1 million views. Another number, yes, but this time a number steeped in resonance rather than ridicule. Messages poured in from veterans, grandmothers, middle school teachers. A widower in Nebraska wrote, "Your sentence about hallway choices made me call my estranged son." I sat at my kitchen table reading these words, dawn light, slanting across the freshly painted walls, and understood that pain once spoken with clarity can guide more than the person who suffered it. Meanwhile, the industry watched. Invitations arrived for panels, advisory boards, ethics, committees. I accepted only those that felt purposeful. Noise, I had learned, can masquerade as opportunity. One board seat placed me beside a legendary banker who had weathered scandals before my birth. During a break, he leaned over and said, "Reputation is a slow-growing tree. Yours now has deep roots. I thanked him, yet inside I knew the roots had sprouted from stone, not soil. News of Marcus and Alex reached me in scattered fragments. Marcus sold his penthouse rumors, whispering of liquidity crises. Alex relocated to a smaller city, working quietly at a regional firm. Friends reported he looked thinner, softer around the eyes, as if carrying an invisible satchel of regret. I felt no triumph, only a gentle release. Their arcs had slipped out of my orbit. In August, the financial magazine published my first column. I titled it Silent Alarms, describing the subtle warnings we ignore: unchecked debt, unreturned calls, laughter that cuts too sharp. Readers wrote that the piece sounded like a neighbor confiding over a fence. Authenticity, I realized, travels farther than polish. One late afternoon, while drafting the second column, I paused to stretch and walked onto the balcony. The city lay below rooftops, glowing amber. I thought about the hospital wristband folded in the wooden box, the screenshots stored in encrypted files, the envelope holding Alex's key, an agreement resting in a locked drawer. Relics of a past that had shaped me, yet no longer defined me. Next week, I will fly to Chicago for a summit on sustainable finance. The firm booked business class seats, yet I requested economy. Humility once tasted is hard to unlearn. Naomi teased me, saying I could at least accept the legroom, but I shook my head. Some upgrades, I told her, belong first in the mind. Before the flight, I will visit my grandmother's grave in Queen's pendant in hand, to thank her for reminding me that worth is measured in steadfastness. I will leave a single white lily symbol of renewal beside her stone, then walk away lighter. Strange how a fracture can become a seam that holds stronger than the original bone. Strange how laughter meant to belittle can echo back as warning bells for others. And stranger still how a woman once sidelined at a dinner table can find herself guiding rooms where the menu lists ethics ahead of profits. My story is no fairy tale. It is simply proof that when the ground breaks beneath you, you may find solid footing in the very fissure. Step wide, plant roots grow tall. Autumn arrived on tiptoe, brushing the city with cool mornings and evenings that invited sweaters from the back of closets. My arm had regained most of its strength by then. I could lift the kettle-open, stubborn windows, even carry a stack of client files without the familiar twinge. Sometimes I ran a thumb across the faint ridge, where bone had knitted, marveling at the quiet work of time and biology. I returned to St. Mary's Hospital on a clear Saturday in October, not as a patient but as a volunteer speaker for their trainee paramedics. The lecture hall smelled of coffee and anticipation. I told the students what trauma looks like from inside the ambulance and inside the heart. I reminded them that every siren wails for more than flesh and bone. It cries for trust, for dignity, for the fragile belief that someone will show up. They listened, pens scratching eyes wide. When the session ended, a young woman approached me and said I'd joined this program because I watched how your story unfolded. I figured character still counts. That sentence warmed me better than any applause. Later that week, I stood in my living room walls, painted calm cream plants, thriving in south-facing light, and sorted through an old shoebox. Out came the hospital wristband, the first X-ray print, and a faded snapshot of Alex and me on a happier night. I placed the photo in a separate envelope, sealed it, and labeled it "Passed." The other items I kept. Reminders are useful the way a lighthouse reminds sailors of rocks even on clear nights. Work blossomed. The firm sent me to London for meetings on ethical investment, and I delivered a keynote that drew a standing ovation from a room full of gray suits. Between sessions, I slipped into the National Gallery, lingering before a portrait of a woman whose eyes held pride and restraint in equal measure. I understood that balance now. Back home, Naomi and I met for dinner at a small Italian place, where the owner still made pasta by hand. Over tiramisu, she asked if I ever feared the story would define me forever. I shook my head. Stories are ladders, I said. You climb, then carry the rung that taught you the most. The rest you leave behind. She raised her glass of sparkling water and clinked mine. One crisp evening, I received a handwritten note from the retired accountant who had once gripped my hands after the TEDx talk. She wrote that she had reconciled with her estranged sister after 29 years. You said courage belongs to anyone willing to lose what is false. I decided to lose my pride. I folded the letter carefully, tears balancing on my lashes. Impact, I realized, is never linear. It ripples in directions we cannot chart. And what of Marcus and Alex reports reached me sporadically. Marcus consulting for smaller firms, quieter, now learning humility, the expensive way. Alex attending weekly meetings for those rebuilding lives after public missteps. I wished them both enough peace to grow enough memory to avoid repetition. We were finished, but compassion need not be amputated. It can exist like a distant light, visible yet too far to burn. As Thanksgiving neared, I hosted a modest dinner for friends and colleagues who, like me, had discovered resilience only after cracks appeared. We ate roasted vegetables, told stories of failures that turned into doorways, and laughed the easy laugh that carries no cruelty. When the night ended, I stood alone on the balcony, city lights blinking like patient stars. A steady wind rustled the pages of my open notebook. I wrote one final line: gratitude grows best in ground cleared of illusion. So here we are, you and I, at the close of this tale. If you believe I chose the right path, if you think confronting betrayal, then walking forward with steady grace was the proper course type, right in the comments below. If you envision a better plan for revenge or redemption, share your idea. The community learns from many voices. And if my journey sparked a memory or a resolve in you, tap subscribe. More stories wait, and we will explore them together. The hallway of choices stretches on. May your next step land on truth.